ecosystem is a functional unit of nature. It comprises of abiotic and biotic components. Abiotic components are air, water, soil, etc., whereas biotic components are producers, consumers, and decomposers. Each ecosystem has its own characteristics. Species composition and stratification are two main structural features of an ecosystem. Based on source of nutrition, every organism occupies a place in an ecosystem.
Hello students, ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਪਾਠ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪ ਸਭ ਦਾ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ। ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਫੂਡ ਚੇਨ ਅਤੇ ਫੂਡ ਵੈਬ, એનર્ਜੀ ਫਲੋ ਐਂਡ ਇਕੋਲੋਜੀਕਲ ਪਿਰਾਮਿਡਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ। ਟੌਪਿਕ ਨੂੰ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰਨ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਪਾਠ ਦੇ ਲਰਨਿੰਗ ਆਬਜੈਕਟਿਵਸ ਤੇ ਨਜ਼ਰ ਪਾ ਲਈਏ।
On completion of this topic, learners will be able to define food chain and food web, classify the trophic levels, differentiate between herbivores, carnivores, and decomposers, describe energy flow and ecological pyramids, state the functions of food web in an ecosystem, state 10% law of energy transfer.
Living organisms interact among themselves and also with the surroundings. These living organisms, along with surroundings, forms an ecosystem. Ecosystem varies greatly in size from a small pond to a large forest or a sea. Many ecologists consider the entire biosphere as a global ecosystem, which consists of all local ecosystems on Earth. Since this system is too big and complex to be studied at one time, it is convenient to divide it into two basic categories, namely the terrestrial and the aquatic. In the terrestrial ecosystem, we include all the living and non-living beings which exist on land masses of continents and islands. While in aquatic ecosystem, we include all living and non-living beings present in water bodies such as river, pond, lake, sea, ocean, etc. We know energy is necessary for all living beings to grow, and many factors jointly work to form energy to living beings. Soil nutrients, air, water, and sunlight collectively provide energy for all living creatures. Plants use all these components to get energy by a process called photosynthesis. Animals get energy from the food they eat. Finally, the dead and decomposed animals become soil nutrients. So this is an endless cycle, or we can say that energy flows in an endless cycle. It neither has a starting point nor an end point, but it changes its forms. It travels in the form of food chain and food web. Let us first clarify the definition of food chain. Food chain: the chain of organisms involved in transfer of food energy from the producers to series of consumers with repeated eating and being eaten is referred to as food chain.
Overall, we can say that food chain shows how each living thing gets food and how nutrients and energy are passed from creature to creature. Food chains begin with plant life and end with animal life. In the food chain, flow of energy is always one directional. In a food chain, plants are producers. They prepare their food through photosynthesis. And these green plants are eaten by herbivores. Example, animals like sheep. Herbivores are eaten by carnivores, that is, sheep eaten by lion. And when carnivores die, they get decomposed by decomposers. And the decomposed material, composed of several materials, is finally added into the soil. This soil again helps to reproduce the plant. Overall energy gets spread in a cyclic form.
In any ecosystem, all living organisms such as plants and animals are linked in a systematic chain. This link is established by their mode of manufacturing food and transferring food from one trophic level to another. This link is known as food chain. But at each trophic level of transfer, a lot of energy is lost in the form of heat and sweat released from body during any activity. Food chain is limited up to 4 trophic levels. So let us first discuss different trophic levels. Green plants यानी कि producers first trophic level नाल concerned हैं. Plant eaters और herbivores second trophic level नाल concerned हैं. जबकि flesh eaters और carnivores third trophic level नाल concerned हैं. Carnivores दे 2-3 level हो सकते हैं. Decomposers last 4th trophic level ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੰਬੰਧਿਤ ਹਨ. Now let us clarify the difference between producers, herbivores, carnivores and decomposers.
We all are familiar with the green plants. These green plants fix up the solar energy and prepare the food with the help of soil nutrients, water and carbon dioxide. The plants which synthesize their own food are known as producers because they provide the food for the herbivores or the animals. We can define producers, consumers, that is herbivores, carnivores, as well as decomposers in this manner. Producers: all plants like grasses, trees, which can make their own food, are known as producers. Consumers: any living being who consumes the producers and other organisms are called as consumers. Consumers can be herbivores or carnivores. Let us discuss about herbivores. The herbivores are the living organisms that get its energy by eating plants. Or we can say the living beings which depend only on herbs, shrubs, trees, etc. are known as herbivores, such as deer, goat, sheep, rabbit, cow and buffalo, etc. Now let's discuss about carnivores. Carnivores, the living being which depend on the herbivore and other animals for their food, is known as carnivores. For example, lion, tiger, leopard, hawk, etc. Carnivores are predators. They hunt and eat other animals to survive. Carnivores have sharp teeth adapted for ripping off meat from a carcass. Carnivores, like the wolf and tiger, have large, powerful jaws that help them to bring down large animals like deer. Most of the carnivores have powerful paws with sharp claws that help them to catch their prey. These animals get food by killing and eating other animals.
ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਕਾਰਨੀਵੋਰਸ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਭੋਜਨ ਸੰਬੰਧੀ ਲੋੜਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੂਰਾ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਦੂਜੇ ਜਾਨਵਰਾਂ ਦਾ ਸ਼ਿਕਾਰ ਕਰਨਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ, ਇਸ ਲਈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਕੈਲੋਰੀਜ਼ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ। ਇਸ ਦਾ ਮਤਲਬ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੂਰੇ ਸਾਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਜਾਨਵਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮਾਰਨ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਪੈਂਦੀ ਹੈ। Scavengers and decomposers include the birds, insects, or animals which mainly depend on the dead animals. Decomposers are responsible for decomposing the dead bodies, and finally decomposed material is added to the soil as soil nutrients. And life again starts from soil in the form of plants. And as we know, plants are the producers in an ecosystem, and it provides the stuff for the herbivores. So these plants play an important role in a food chain. Now let us discuss the characteristics of food chain. Characteristics of the food chain. Flow of energy in food chain is unidirectional. Food chain is arranged in a linear manner, such as producers, herbivores, carnivores, and then decomposers. Now let us understand the food chain through an example.
Here we are stating a food chain in form of a diagram. In this diagram, grass is first eaten by a grasshopper. This grasshopper is eaten by a frog, and frog is eaten by a snake, and then this snake is eaten by a hawk. Take another example. The grass is eaten by a rabbit, which in turn is eaten by a fox. This fox is again eaten by a lion. This depicts a simple food chain in which energy flows in a straight single path.
Sometimes you might have seen plants are eaten by a goat. Goat is eaten by a man. But sometimes plants are directly consumed by man, and man is eaten by a lion or a tiger. Thus, it will become the complex chain, and such interconnection between different food chains is known as food web. Let us make clearer by the visuals.
Food web. In nature, all animals are interlinked based on their food requirements, which constitute different food chains. As we know that plenty of greenery or plants are found in nature. This provides the food for all herbivores, such as sheep. Green plants, which are also known as producers, they are counted as first trophic level, while sheep is on the second trophic level. When the sheep or herbivores are consumed by lion or carnivores, it means the energy is transferred into the third trophic level. While this chain is interconnected with various other food chains, then it is known as food web, such as green grass or plants may be consumed by insects, rat or rabbit. Rat, rabbit, lizard and snake may be consumed by eagle. Insect, rabbit and lizard may be foodstuff for snake or the eagle. Here, 3 food chains are interlinked, therefore it is known as food web.
I hope now it is clear that 2 or more food chains are interlinked with each other, then it is known as food web. Now let us discuss characteristics of food web. Transmission of energy through various paths. Food web never follows the straight path of energy transfer. Food web is formed by interlinking of food chains. Food web helps in ecosystem development. Food web provides alternative pathways of food availability. Do you know what is the advantage of this food web? Okay, let me explain. If a particular species of producer is destroyed by a disease in the ecosystem, then the herbivores of that particular species can choose any other alternative species for their consumption or feeding. Thus, our ecosystems will not be affected by the disease and the particular species choose the other alternative foods. So let us know more about the functions of food web in ecosystem. Food web provides the stability in ecosystem by providing alternative foods. Ecosystem can regulate the change and stability. For example, if the rabbits are more in ecosystem, then it will become the food of foxes. And if foxes are more, then they may become food for tigers or leopards. And when tigers are more, then human beings may start hunting. So overall, it regulates the sustainability of the environment. It provides life support to other living beings. It helps to generate economy by selling of flesh and fur of the animals. So this was all about the role of food web in an ecosystem. Now let us discuss energy flow, which is unidirectional. How is it unidirectional? Let us see. Energy flow. As we know, plants capture only 2 to 10% of the photosynthetically active radiation or PAR, and this small amount of energy sustains the entire living world. So it is very important to know how the solar energy captured by plants flows through different organisms of an ecosystem.
All organisms are dependent for their food on producers either directly or indirectly. So you find unidirectional flow of energy from the sun to producers and then to consumers. This is known as law of thermodynamics. Further, ecosystems require constant supply of energy to synthesize the molecules.
As we know, the food chain or food web is based on producers such as green plants or phytoplankton, algae, etc. The sun energy is transferred in a cyclic manner. It flows in a cyclic manner. It gets transferred from sun to plants, plants to herbivores like goat and sheep, herbivores to carnivores such as lion, carnivores to decomposers such as bacteria and fungus, and finally to the soil. So, no energy that is trapped into an organism remains in it forever. Let us see how.
When an animal eats a plant, the organic substances of plant are oxidized in animal's body to liberate energy for cellular activities. Some of the energy released in animal gets dissipated in heat when a second animal eats the first. Further loss of energy as heat occurs. Decomposition of dead animals also releases chemical energy. So, most of energy is stored in plants is by photosynthesis, and this stored energy is again transferred to herbivores. The energy trapped by the producer is either passed on to a consumer or the organism dies. Death of an organism is the beginning of the detritus food chain or food web.
The number of trophic levels in the food chain is restricted as the transfer of energy follows 10% law. Only 10% of the energy is transferred to each trophic level from the lower trophic level. In nature, it is possible to have so many levels: producers, herbivores, primary carnivores, secondary carnivores in the food chain. After the energy flow, let us know about the ecological pyramids. I know that all of you are familiar with the shape of a pyramid. Ecological pyramids were developed by Charles Elton in 1927. Therefore, ecological pyramids are also known as Eltonian pyramids. The base of a pyramid is broad and it narrows down at the apex. This relationship may be expressed in terms of number, biomass, or energy. Let us see an example.
This is an ideal pyramid of energy. Observe that primary producers convert only 1% of the energy in the sunlight available to them into net primary productivity. You must remember that the trophic level represents a functional level, not a species as such. A given species may occupy more than one trophic level in the same ecosystem at the same time. For example, a sparrow is a primary consumer when it eats seeds, fruits, peas, and a secondary consumer when it eats insects and worms. That's why in most ecosystems, all the pyramids of number, of energy, and biomass are upright. That is, producers are more in number than the herbivores, and herbivores are more in number than the carnivores. It depicts that pyramid of energy is always upright, can never be inverted, because when energy flows from a particular trophic level to the next trophic level, some energy is always lost as heat at each step. Each bar in the energy pyramid indicates the amount of energy present at each trophic level in a given time or annually per unit area.
Lindemann gave the concept of 10% energy transmission law. It is estimated that about 90% of the energy is used up at each trophic level and only 10% of it is transferred to the next trophic level. As a result, no energy is left for recycling at the last trophic level. Thus, there is maximum energy at the producer level and minimum energy at the last level of trophic level. Let us make the concept clear through visuals.
10% law of energy transfer. As we know that the energy flows in a particular direction through simple food chains to complex food webs. At each level of the food chains, about 90% of the energy is lost in the form of heat. The total energy passed from one level to the next is only about 1/10 of the energy received from the previous organism. Therefore, as you move up the food chain, there is less energy available. Animals located at the top of the food chain need a lot more food to meet their energy needs.
Let us recapitulate the Lindeman's rule in a simplest form. For example, let us assume if sun provides 1 lakh calories or energy, then out of that only 1/10 or 10,000 calories are received by plants or grass. The grasshopper receives 10%, means 1000 calories from the plant. The frog gets 10%, means 100 calories from the grasshopper. The snake gets 10%, means 10 calories from the frog. The eagle gets 10%, means 1 calorie from the snake. When the eagle dies and is decomposed by the mushroom gets only 1/10 calorie or energy from the decomposed matter. This entire pyramid is known as ecological pyramid. But sometimes saprophytes are not given any place in ecological pyramids, even though they play a vital role in the ecosystem. ਪਿਆਰੇ ਬੱਚਿਓ, ਮੈਨੂੰ ਉਮੀਦ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਫੂਡ ਚੇਨ, ਫੂਡ ਵੈਬ, એનર્ਜੀ ਫਲੋ ਅਤੇ ਇਕੋਲੋਜੀਕਲ ਪਿਰਾਮਿਡ ਨਾਲ ਫੈਮਿਲੀਅਰ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਹੋਵੋਗੇ। ਹੁਣ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਡਿਸਕਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਐਂਡ ਤੇ ਪਹੁੰਚ ਗਏ ਹਾਂ। ਚਲੋ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰੀ ਦੁਹਰਾਈ ਕਰਕੇ ਵੇਖੀਏ ਕਿ ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਕੀ ਕੁਝ ਪੜ੍ਹਿਆ ਹੈ। Today we have discussed about the food chain, food web, energy flow and energy transfer law. We discussed that the chain of organisms involved in transfer of food energy from the producers to series of consumers with repeated eating and being eaten is referred to as food chain. In the food chain, flow of energy is always one directional, while the network of food chain is called food web. In the food web, energy is transmitted through various paths. In any ecosystem, plants and animals are linked in a systematic chain with respect to their mode of manufacturing food and transferring food from one trophic level to another. But at each trophic level of transfer, a lot of energy is lost in the form of heat and sweat released from body during any activity. It is estimated that about 90% of the energy is used up at each trophic level and only 10% of it is transferred to the next trophic level. Now here is a quick test for you to find out how much you have actually absorbed. The question is, name the living beings which get energy by eating plants. The answer is, herbivores get energy by eating plants. My next question is, who are known as producers in our environment? The answer is, plants are known as producers in our environment. Next question. Who are known as consumers in our environment? Answer. Animals are known as consumers in our environment. The next question is, which category of animals depend on herbivores? The answer is, carnivores depend on herbivores. Next question. Tell me the flow of energy is always shown straight, whether in food chain or food web. The answer is, in food chain, the flow of energy is always straight. Next question. Complete the sentence. The network of food chains is known as dash. Answer. The network of food chains is known as food web. My next question is, which scientist developed ecological pyramids in year 1927? The answer is Charles Elton developed ecological pyramids in 1927. ਪਿਆਰੇ ਬੱਚਿਓ, ਹੁਣ ਵੇਲਾ ਹੈ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਤੋਂ ਇਜਾਜ਼ਤ ਲੈਣ ਦਾ। ਮੈਨੂੰ ਉਮੀਦ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਪਾਠ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਭਰਪੂਰ ਅਤੇ ਰੋਚਕ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਹੋਵੇਗਾ। ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਧਿਆਨ ਦੇਣ ਲਈ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ। ਫਿਰ ਮਿਲਾਂਗੇ।